So we're constantly hearing about plastic, right? Especially in the ocean. But what about the stuff we can't actually see?
You mean the nano and microplastics?
Yeah, exactly. These like incredibly tiny particles, and there's growing concern about what happens if they, get into our bodies. So today we're doing a deep dive into some pretty fascinating science that actually tracked these little plastic bits after after they were ingested.
Right. The study we're looking at, its title is The Uptake and Distribution Evidence of Nano and Microplastics in Vivo After a Single High Dose of Oral Exposure.
Okay.
And what's really interesting here is that the scientists used fluorescent plastic particles, different sizes, and then they followed them. They watched where they went inside a living organism, mice in this case.
So you can actually see where they end up.
Exactly. It gives us a real glimpse into how far and maybe how fast these things might travel.
Okay, so our mission for you today is basically to unpack the key findings from this study. But, without getting totally bogged down in the heavy science speak.
Yeah, just the core stuff.
We want to get a handle on what happens to these tiny plastics once they're ingested. Where do they go? How fast? That kind of thing. Think of it as your shortcut to getting, informed on this.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's get into it. First up, maybe we should clarify, microplastics, nanoplastics. What's the actual difference?
Yeah, a good place to start. It really just comes down to size. Microplastics, MPs, are generally defined as particles smaller than 5 millimeters.
Okay.
Nanoplastics, or NPs, they're way smaller, less than 100 nanometers.
Wow, okay, that's tiny. How small is that, compared to something real?
Well, think about a human hair. It's roughly 80,000 to 100,000 nanometers wide. So nanoplastics are significantly smaller than that.
Right.
And this specific study, they used fluorescent polystyrene microspheres, 3 sizes. 100 nanometers, the nanoparticles, and then 3 micrometers and 10 micrometers, which are the microplastics.
So 3,000 and 10,000 nanometers for the microplastics then.
Exactly. And they gave these to the mice orally.
Polystyrene.
Right.
That rings a bell. Why that plastic specifically?
Well, polystyrene is just really common. We see it, every day in packaging, styrofoam, disposable cups, containers, even some cosmetics use it.
Ah, okay. So it's relevant to what we might actually encounter.
Very relevant. And the study's introduction also touches on why this is a concern. It mentions potential issues like disrupting gut bacteria, maybe metabolic problems, oxidative stress in cells.
Oxidative stress, like damage.
Yeah, sort of cellular damage, and potential impacts on different body systems, too.
Okay, got it. So the players, these tiny plastics, let's track their journey. What about those really small ones, the 100 nanometer nanoplastics? What did the researchers find happened after they were ingested?
It's actually quite striking how fast things happened. The study showed they first showed up, concentration peaked, in the digestive system, stomach, and small intestine really quickly, like within half an hour.
Just 30 minutes.
Wow.
That is fast. Did they just stay there in the gut?
No, not at all. That was just the initial peak. They saw this rapid movement, translocation is the technical term, to other places.
Like where?
Well, the large intestine and eventually into the excrement, sure.
Right.
But also, surprisingly, into organs like the lungs, kidneys, liver, even skeletal muscles.
Skeletal muscles, really?
Yeah. And the highest levels in those other organs were seen just 4 hours after ingestion.
4 hours.
Yeah.
It really shows how quickly they can spread through the system. Must be through the blood, right?
That's the most likely route, yeah, through blood circulation. The study actually confirmed the peak absorption into the blood happened really fast, too, also within that first 30 minutes.
Incredible. And you mentioned potential effects earlier. Did this fast movement seem to, do anything?
It seemed to correlate with some effects, yes. In the group that got the nanoplastics, the researchers noted some mucosal injury in the stomach and small intestines, some damage to the lining, the epithelium, even some inflammation.
Okay, so actual irritation or damage.
Seems like it. They also saw mild congestion in the lungs, some slight changes in the liver and kidneys, and those effects in the skeletal muscles, too.
Huh. So it looks like the smallest particles are not only the most mobile, getting around the body quickly, but they also seem linked to some noticeable tissue effects pretty fast.
That seems to be what the data suggests, yes.
Okay, so what about the bigger ones, the 3 micrometer and 10 micrometer microplastics? How did their journey compare?
Yeah, it was a pretty stark contrast, actually. The study found much less penetration into other organs with these larger microplastics.
Less getting out of the gut.
Exactly. For the 3 micrometer ones, they did see a temporary spike in the lungs around the 2-hour mark. And of course, they were present in the digestive system initially, but not that widespread distribution like the nanoplastics.
Okay, makes sense. And the biggest ones they tested, the 10 micrometer particles.
Those pretty much stayed in the digestive tract. They found them mainly in the large intestine and then in the excrement. Their levels peaked a bit later, around 2 hours post-ingestion.
Suggesting they were mostly just passing through.
That's what it looks like, yes. Primarily being expelled. And importantly, there wasn't significant absorption of those 10 micrometer particles into other organs.
That's a really clear difference then. It really seems like size is the key factor for whether they can, escape the gut.
It appears to be, yes.
Did they look at tissue effects for these larger ones too?
They did, and compared to the nanoplastic group, they found less evidence of changes in cell structure for the groups that got the 3 micrometer and 10 micrometer particles.
Less damage overall.
Generally, yes, though they did note some swelling in the small intestine for the 3 micrometer group, but overall less impact compared to the nanos.
Okay, so the picture emerging is pretty clear. Size really, really matters in terms of where these plastics end up. What are the main takeaways for us from this research?
Well, the biggest one, as you said, is that nanoplastics seem able to spread rapidly throughout the body. They get into the bloodstream quickly and reach various organs, including skeletal muscle. Whereas the larger microplastics, they tend to stay more contained within the digestive system and are mostly just excreted.
So that ability to cross biological barriers like the gut wall seems strongly tied to being really, really small.
Precisely. Size is critical.
And that finding about skeletal muscle, you said that was kind of new, a potential storage spot.
Yeah, the study highlighted skeletal muscle as a potential site where these nanoplastics might accumulate. That's quite a novel finding from this particular research, suggesting maybe we need to look more closely at muscle tissue in the future.
Interesting. And excretion, mostly through poop, basically.
The study suggests that's the main route out, yes.
Yeah.
For both the nano and microplastics they tested, elimination was primarily via excrement.
Okay. Now, this study gives us a really valuable snapshot, but it was done in mice with a single high dose.
Yeah.
The researchers themselves pointed out some limitations, right, when you think about humans.
Absolutely. That's crucial context. This was one dose, and quite a high one, in mice. We definitely need more research to understand what happens with long-term, lower-level exposure, the kind that might be more relevant to our actual environment.
Right, like what we might be exposed to day to day.
Exactly. And also, they used spherical polystyrene particles. In the real world, plastics come in all shapes and sizes, including fibers, which are super common.
Like for clothes.
Yeah, textiles are a big source. And those different shapes, like fibers, might behave differently in the body compared to spheres. So more work needed there, too.
Got it. So to kind of boil it down for you, the listener, the really crucial insight from this deep dive seems to be this stark difference based on size. Nanoplastics show this surprising ability to get around the whole body pretty quickly, while the larger microplastics mostly stayed put in the digestive system.
It's a significant distinction.
Which really leaves us with a provocative thought, doesn't it? Given how widespread these tiny, tiny particles are. I mean, they're potentially in our air, our water, our food.
They're quite ubiquitous, yes.
What are the longer-term implications of this kind of distribution, especially the nanoplastics getting into various organs?
Yeah.
What other questions does this raise for you about, well, this unseen world inside us and maybe your own exposure?
It certainly gives you something to think about, and it highlights why scientists are digging deeper into this field, trying to understand the full picture. There's still a lot to learn.